All right, let's jump into this deep dive. We're exploring some really compelling ideas today about the surprising power of tiny habits.
Yeah, think about how making genuinely small, consistent changes can actually unlock some pretty, well, remarkable transformations over time.
It's the impact of daily routines, right? And how the world around us and even our own thinking plays a huge role.
What's fascinating about the material we're looking at is how it connects the dots between, personal experience and solid research.
Hmm.
It gives us a kind of practical roadmap for understanding not just what habits are, but how they actually work, and why these, like, seemingly tiny actions are so crucial for making change that lasts.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is really to pull out the most important insights, the practical strategies. We
Yeah.
want to help you see the mechanics behind how habits form and really get why committing to those tiny, consistent actions truly matters for, the long haul.
And that journey, it really starts with grappling with this idea of the unexpected power of small things. Often the biggest shifts don't start with some grand plan, but just because, well, life forces you to start small.
That's such a powerful starting point from the source material. It opens with this incredibly difficult personal story, the author having this severe injury, talking about broken bones in their face, bulging eye, double vision, even
Whoa.
seizures. Wow.
Yeah, intense. And the recovery wasn't quick. It was long, challenging. It forced a completely different kind of progress.
It wasn't like one heroic leap forward.
No, not at all. The source describes it as a gradual evolution, like a long series of small wins and tiny breakthroughs. That whole experience was the catalyst, really. It highlighted that the only way forward, the only real option, was to start small.
Which immediately brings us to this fundamental concept, right? This idea of tiny gains or tiny losses just compounding over time.
Exactly. It's like the material says those things you actually see in your life, your weight, your finances, how much, the state of your house, whatever. They're often just the lagging measures. They're the results of your daily
You
habits.
get what you repeat. That line hits home.
It really does.
Yeah.
And this compounding effect, well, that's where a lot of people get tripped up, get
It's
frustrated.
cool, yeah.
You make a small change, you put in the work, but you don't see these immediate, huge results. The source calls this the plateau of latent potential.
And that feeling you get is the valley of disappointment. Ugh.
Right. You feel like the effort is just wasted because progress isn't, a straight line shooting upwards.
Oh, that valley of disappointment
Mm.
feels so real when you're in it. You're putting in the effort, maybe going to the gym, eating better, but the scale doesn't budge or things
Yeah.
don't feel different. It's incredibly demotivating.
It really is. But the crucial insight here is that the work isn't wasted at all. It's just stored potential.
Like the ice cube analogy from the source.
Exactly. Think about heating an ice cube. You're increasing the temperature, say from 25 degrees up to 31 degrees. You're adding energy, putting in effort, but on the surface, still just an ice cube.
No visible change yet.
Right. No dramatic change. But that work isn't lost. It's being stored. The sudden visible melting, that happens right at 32 degrees.
I love that analogy. That's the moment people on the outside look at and go, wow, overnight success. But they completely miss all that invisible energy, all the effort that went into getting it from 25 to 31 degrees.
Yeah, or like the geological pressure analogy they use. Building unseen for ages before the earthquake hits.
Yeah.
All that unseen work makes the sudden shift possible.
It totally reframes how we should think about progress, doesn't it?
It really does. And if results take that long to show up, well, where should we actually focus our energy? And this brings us to a really critical shift the source highlights, moving away from just focusing on the outcome, the goal.
And focusing instead on the systems. Okay, this feels like a fundamental reorientation because the source points out some real potential problems with making goals your main focus. Like,
Yeah.
one is they can actually restrict your happiness.
That's right. You tie your happiness to some future state, thinking, okay, once I reach X goal, then I'll be happy.
Right.
And it creates this kind of either-or trap. You either hit the goal and you're successful for that moment, or you don't and you feel like a failure.
And even if you do hit it, what happens after you cross the finish line? Often you stop doing the very things that got you there.
Exactly. The behavior disappears because the only motivation was hitting that specific target. So the key insight is that results are fundamentally a lagging measure of your habits of your system.
Your bank account balance is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your fitness is a lagging measure of your exercise habits.
Precisely. So if you want lasting improvement, the focus can't just be the outcome. You have to fix the underlying systems that produce those outcomes.
I love that phrase from the source. Fix the inputs and the outputs will fix themselves.
It's about building sustainable processes, things you do consistently that just naturally lead to the results you want, rather than constantly chasing specific targets. And underlying these systems, the source argues, is something even deeper.
Identity. Okay, this is fascinating. The idea that our behaviors aren't just random actions, but they're often, like consciously or not, a reflection of who we believe we are.
Yeah, the source mentions research suggesting that if you adopt the belief, I'm a certain type of person, you're way more likely to act in line with that belief.
Like the example of being a voter versus just voting.
Exactly. That small shift in framing, focusing on identity, made people much more likely to actually go and vote. So the ultimate goal isn't just to, say, run a marathon. It's to become the type of person who runs.
That identity shift is positioned as the North Star of habit change. It's not just about getting a result, it's about the process of becoming that kind of person who naturally achieves that result.
And it becomes this really powerful feedback loop, right? Your daily habits are literally shaping your identity bit by bit. And then, in turn, your evolving identity reinforces or changes your habits.
It's a two-way street.
Totally. When you focus on becoming that type of person, someone aligned with your values, it just guides the whole process in a much more meaningful way.
Okay, so if we want to build these systems and work towards becoming that person, how does the process actually work? Like, what's the mechanism? The source breaks down how habits form into this simple four-stage cycle.
Yeah, this is the core engine. Cue, craving, response, and reward. Every single habit, good or bad, apparently follows this pattern. Your brain runs through these stages in the same order every single time.
Okay, let's walk through them real quick. What kicks it off? The trigger.
That's the cue. It's the trigger any little bit of information in your environment, really, that signals or predicts a reward is coming. It basically tells your brain, hey, pay attention. Something interesting might happen here.
Okay, so the cue grabs your attention. What does that lead to?
It creates the craving. Now, this is the motivational force. It's not necessarily the desire for the habit itself. Like, you don't crave checking your phone. You crave the feeling of connection or novelty it might provide. It's the desire for the feeling or the state you expect the reward to deliver. It's about wanting.
Okay, cue sparks a craving. What's next?
The response. This is the actual habit you perform. The action you take could be a thought or an action, big or small, picking up the phone, eating the cookie, going for a run.
Got it. And finally, what closes the loop?
The reward. This is what satisfies that craving. It provides some kind of benefit, pleasure, pain relief, fulfilling a need, whatever. The reward closes the feedback loop and essentially teaches your brain whether this whole sequence was worth remembering and repeating in the future.
And the source is pretty clear, right? If any one of those four stages is weak or missing, like no clear cue, no strong craving, the response is too hard, or the reward just isn't satisfying, then the behavior probably won't become a habit, or at least not a strong one.
Exactly. All four parts need to be working together for a habit to really stick. And that insight leads directly to the practical application. The four laws of behavior change. These are basically principles derived from that cycle, telling us how to make a good habit more likely or a bad habit less likely by tweaking each stage.
Okay, so the first law tackles the cue. Make it obvious.
Right. That's because cues for our habits, especially the ingrained ones, can become so commonplace, so integrated into our environment that we just stop consciously noticing them.
Like the remote always being on the coffee table, or your phone buzzing in your pocket, or those snacks left out on the counter.
Yeah, exactly. These are powerful cues that we often respond to without even really thinking about it. They become almost invisible.
And this is why awareness is so critical. It reminds me of that quote the source uses from Carl Jung. Something like, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
Whoa, deep. But true, right? We have to shine a light on what's actually triggering our behavior before we can change it.
So how do we build that awareness? The source suggests some tools.
Yeah, one is the habit scorecard, which is basically just making a list of your daily habits to see what you're actually doing and what cues might be triggering them. It can be pretty eye-opening.
And there's that cool example of pointing and calling from the Japanese railway system.
Oh, yeah, I love that one, where the conductors literally point at signals and call out, signal is green, or whatever.
Right, it forces something that could be non-conscious into conscious awareness.
Yeah.
And you could apply that same idea to your own habits, like verbally saying, I'm putting my keys on the hook now, to make the cue conscious.
And then there's the massive influence of our environment, Kurt Lewin's idea, right? Behavior is a function of the person in their environment. B equals FPE.
We are constantly being shaped and nudged by the world around us, often in ways we just don't realize.
Totally. And we tend to choose the most obvious option, don't we? Why is certain beer everywhere? Because it's the obvious choice in most bars. Why is there a coffee shop on every corner?
Proximity and visibility. It's just there. We often pick what's easiest to see or access, even if we think we're making some careful, rational choice.
So, if you want to build good habits, the logic follows. You need to make the cue incredibly obvious. Design your environment. Sprinkle triggers for the habits you want.
Put the healthy snack front and center in the fridge. Leave your running shoes by the door. Put the book you want to read on your pillow. Make the best choice the most obvious one.
Environment design is just so powerful. That hospital cafeteria example is great. Just rearranging the food, putting healthier stuff at eye level, making sugary drinks harder to grab. It significantly changed what people bought. Without lectures or signs, just design.
Sometimes even just changing your environment helps, right?
Right.
Like going to a new grocery store. If your usual one has a layout that always leads you past the chips aisle first, you escape the old queues.
Or just work with the environment you have, the one space, one use idea. Assign a specific space for a specific activity. This desk is only for work, this chair is only for reading. It creates a really clear context cue.
The author mentioned separating their workspace from their personal space, right?
Mhm.
To create that clearer boundary. Avoid mixing contexts if you can. Don't eat lunch at your work desk if possible.
Exactly. And then flipping it for bad habits. If you want to break one, the first law says make the cue invisible. Cut the habit off at the source. Make it impractical to even start.
Because trying to resist temptation constantly when you're surrounded by cues for bad habits, that's just exhausting. It relies on willpower, which is finite.
Right. It's incredibly draining and often fails in the long run. The source also points out how some cues for bad habits can backfire if used negatively, like those gruesome pictures on cigarette packs.
Yeah.
They might increase anxiety, which ironically could drive some smokers back to smoking as a way to cope with that anxiety. So the habit becomes like autocatalytic. The stress it causes reinforces the need for it. Making cues invisible is usually a much better bet than just trying to tough it out.
Agreed. Way easier to just not buy the cookies than stare at them in the cupboard all day.
Okay, moving on. The second law, which targets the craving, make it attractive.
Okay, this is where dopamine comes in, right? Habits are described as these dopamine-driven feedback loops.
Yeah, but the key thing is dopamine isn't just released when you get the reward. A big surge happens in anticipation of the reward. It's really about the wanting, the craving itself.
And the modern world is full of things designed to hijack that system.
Oh, yeah. The source talks about supernormal stimuli, drawing on those classic experiments, like with the gull chicks pecking more at fake beaks with exaggerated red spots than real ones.
So our brains are wired for certain things, and modern tech and industry just dials those up to 11.
Exactly. Think about the food industry. They exploit our ancient Paleolithic cravings for salt, sugar, fat, using techniques like dynamic contrast, like crunchy chips dissolving, or aura sensation, the way food feels in your mouth. It makes junk food incredibly attractive to our brain.
That is not just food. Video games, social media. They're engineered for high dopamine release in anticipation of novelty or connection.
Definitely. And then there's the huge pull of social norms. We are fundamentally herd animals. We have this deep-seated need to fit in, to belong. It's a survival instinct from way back. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives.
So behaviors become super attractive when they're the norm in groups we admire or want to belong to.
Right. Like the Polgar family making chess super attractive because it was praised and central to their family culture. Or the Turkish smokers example, many started just because their friends smoked. We imitate people we're close to, the majority, and those we see as powerful or successful.
So fitting in makes a behavior attractive. But can you change your own cravings internally? The source talks about reframing your mindset.
Yeah, like Alan Carr's method for smokers. It's not about willpower, but systematically changing the meaning you associate with smoking cues, making it seem less attractive, even repulsive.
Or other examples, like reframing a distraction during meditation, not as a failure, but as, oh good, a chance to practice returning my focus.
Or seeing pre-game jitters not as fear, but as excitement and adrenaline getting you ready. These mindset shifts, as the source calls them, can genuinely change the feeling, the craving associated with a situation or a habit.
Because ultimately, emotion drives action, right? Logic often just comes along later to justify it. The craving, that feeling, comes before the response.
And your actions, in the end, they really reveal what you truly want, what your underlying motivations are.
Okay, so that leads us to the third law, focusing on the response itself. Make it easy.
And this law brings up a really critical distinction, the difference between being in motion and taking action.
Motion being like planning, strategizing, reading about doing something.
Right. It feels productive, you're doing stuff, but it doesn't actually produce a result on its own. Taking action, however, does produce an outcome, actually writing the report, actually doing the workout.
And we often default to motion because it lets us feel busy and like we're making progress, but without the actual risk of failure or criticism that comes with putting something out there. It's kind of a way to delay potential failure.
Exactly. But for habits to actually form and stick, repetition is absolutely key. And it's the frequency of repeating the action, not just how much time passes, that really matters.
Like the London taxi driver's example. Their brains physically changed. The hippocampus grew with the sheer experience of navigating the city. Repeating an action literally strengthens those neural circuits.
Right? Which brings us to the law of least effort. It's just basic human nature. We gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of energy or work. Like water flowing downhill, we follow the path of least resistance.
Like the garden hose analogy, water flows easily through a straight hose, but kinks add friction and stop the flow.
Perfect analogy. So to make good habits easy, you have to drastically reduce the friction, remove the kinks in the hose.
And successful companies get this right. They design products and services to automate steps, eliminate steps, simplify everything.
Totally. Meal delivery kits, dating apps, simplifying introductions, voice assistants, fewer clicks to buy something online. Business is framed as this never-ending quest to deliver the same result in an easier fashion.
Governments do it too, with things like automatic prescription refills or automatic deductions for retirement savings. Automating those beneficial but maybe slightly tedious choices just frees up mental energy.
And a really practical strategy for individuals is priming the environment for future use.
Ah, yeah, the Oswald Knuckles resetting the room example. Putting the remote back, arranging pillows, cleaning trash out of the car. It's not just tidying up from the last action.
Right. It's preparing the environment to make the next desired action easier, like laying out your workout clothes the night before, or setting up your coffee maker. Reduce the friction for future you.
This ties into that idea of decisive moments too, those little forks in the road during the day.
Yeah, takeout versus cooking, driving versus biking, homework versus video games. Mastering these small moments is really powerful because they set the options available to your future self. Like deciding which restaurant to go to that choice determines the menu you'll choose from later.
And a fantastic tool to make just starting easy is the 2-minute rule.
Love this one. The rule is, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
The goal isn't to finish the whole habit in 2 minutes, right? It's just to make the entry point incredibly easy, almost laughably easy.
Exactly. Like read one page, not read a chapter, or tie my running shoes, not run 5K, or meditate for 1 minute, or just open my lecture notes. It's a gateway habit.
It just gets you started. And often, once you've started, continuing is much easier.
Precisely. And it connects to that idea of standardize before you optimize. You can't improve a habit you're not doing consistently. First, just make showing up easy. Standardize that part. Then worry about making it better or longer.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So finally, we get to the fourth law, dealing with the reward. Make it satisfying.
Yeah, we are fundamentally wired to repeat behaviors that feel good, that are satisfying. The reward is what closes that habit loop and makes the brain go, okay, yeah, let's do that again.
But the modern world throws a wrench in the works here, doesn't it? It's a delayed return environment.
Exactly. So many things that are good for us in the long run, working out, saving money, studying, eating healthy, they don't give you an immediate tangible payoff right now.
Whereas our brains evolved for an immediate return environment. Hunting got you food now. Finding shelter gave you safety now.
Right. And this mismatch explains why instant gratification is so powerful and why so many bad habits persist. Smoking, overeating, mindless scrolling. The negative consequences are often delayed, maybe for years. But the rewards, a hit of nicotine, tasty food, novel stimulation, those are immediate.
So in the moment of decision, instant gratification usually beats abstract plans for our future selves.
It often does. So the strategy here is to try and bridge that gap. You need to add a little bit of immediate pleasure or satisfaction to the good habits that pay off later, and maybe add a little immediate pain or cost to the bad ones.
Like that couple saving for a trip to Europe. Every time they skipped eating out, they immediately transferred a set amount of money to a special trip fund.
Yeah, that gives an immediate, tangible reward seeing the fund grow for the desired behavior, which is saving money.
And it's important too, right, that those short-term rewards actually reinforce the identity you're trying to build rather than conflicting with it.
Oh, definitely. Getting a massage after sticking to your workout plan reinforces being a healthy, active person who takes care of themselves. Rewarding yourself with a giant bowl of ice cream maybe feels good, but could conflict if your larger goal is health or weight loss. You want the reward aligned with the long-term vision.
As those intrinsic rewards start to build up, feeling more energetic, less stressed, seeing progress, maybe the need for those external artificial rewards fades a bit.
For sure. But they are really crucial early on, just to make the habit feel satisfying in the moment when the long-term benefits haven't kicked in yet.
And habit tracking is a great tool here for making progress itself feel satisfying.
Absolutely. It gives you visual proof of your work, which is inherently rewarding. Seeing a streak build up that don't break the chain idea is incredibly motivating. And honestly, just the simple act of checking something off a list feels good.
And then for making bad habits immediately unsatisfying, you can introduce immediate consequences.
Yeah, things like accountability partners, just knowing someone is watching or you have to report back, adds social pressure. Or habit contracts, like that example of the guy who had to pay his coach or wear a rival team's jersey if he missed his weight goal. It makes the failure immediately painful.
Okay, so those are the 4 laws. But beyond that, the source talks about what it takes to actually sustain progress over the long haul. And one of the biggest threats isn't failure, surprisingly, but just boredom.
That's so true. Once the novelty wears off, once it becomes routine, the greatest threat to sticking with it is often just the sheer boredom of doing the same thing over and over again.
The insight from that coach about elite athletes was interesting. It wasn't that they have superhuman motivation.
Right. It's that they handle the boredom of repetition better than others. Professionals stick to the schedule, they do the reps, even when it's monotonous, annoying, or painful, they find a way to push through the boredom.
So it's about finding a way to maybe not love the boredom, but find satisfaction in the act of showing up consistently, even when it's not exciting anymore.
Yeah, falling in love with the process, not just the outcome. The source also touches on talent and genetics. It's not saying destiny is predetermined.
No, but genetics do seem to determine areas of opportunity, right? Where things might come a bit easier or feel more satisfying.
Exactly. It's often easier and more rewarding to stick with habits that kind of align with your natural abilities or your personality. If you're naturally introverted, maybe forcing yourself into hypersocial habits will always feel like a struggle.
So the key isn't necessarily to fight your nature, but maybe to pick the right field of competition, as the source says, or play a game that favors your strengths.
Yeah, your genes don't dictate whether you work hard, but they might help clarify what kinds of habits and efforts will feel most rewarding and lead to the best results for you specifically. It's about alignment.
And maintaining mastery, getting really good at something, it requires both those automatic habits and deliberate practice, right? You can't just repeat mindlessly forever.
No, you need moments of reflection and review. You need to analyze your performance, identify weaknesses, and consciously work on improving them. The source warns against letting your identity pride, I'm already good at this, stop you from seeing where you can get better. You have to break beliefs that hold you back.
And finally, there's this really powerful reminder about where true satisfaction comes from. It's maybe less about constantly wanting more.
And more about liking what you have. That Seneca quote, satisfaction equals liking minus wanting. It really hits home.
Happiness is so relative, isn't it? Our expectations shape our satisfaction so much. Like the author's experience with email subscribers, the initial joy fades as expectations just keep rising.
Yeah, the feeling of satisfaction ultimately follows the action and the reward. You chase the idea of pleasure, the craving, and then pleasure or satisfaction ensues if the habit works out. It's about managing the wanting.
So, wrapping this all up, the core message seems crystal clear. Remarkable results, big changes, they don't usually come from massive sudden transformations. They come from leveraging the incredible power of tiny, consistent habits.
Yeah, built on that foundation of understanding how habits work, those 4 stages, and then applying the 4 laws, make them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
And always refining your systems. with that idea of the person you want to become, your identity as your North Star.
And it's not about being perfect every single day. It's about consistency, just showing up for those tiny actions again and again, even when it feels boring, even when it feels difficult. That's where the magic happens over time.
Absolutely. So as you reflect on this deep dive and think about applying these powerful ideas in your own life, here's maybe a provocative thought for you to consider. What one small habit, knowing what you now know about making it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, what one tiny thing could you commit to starting or maybe refining just this week that would move you even just one small step closer to the person you ultimately want to become?